when you're helping others, it's kind of like this drug of like, okay, I don't have to think about me. I don't have to do my work on me. I don't have to do that internal work on me. So it's a lot easier for me to be like, if you're asking me for a favor, right? And I'm dealing with something like challenging, like personally or something like that. But then that's allowing me to avoid like reevaluating some big personal thing going on in my life, which is way more difficult.
Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. I am your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner for over 25 years, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. On today's episode, I'm joined by Jill Beck, founder of Go Long. Jill spent years in investment banking in a high performance, high pressure environment before making a significant transition in her own life. Today, she works with high achieving women who are navigating major life changes and helps them simplify, gain clarity, and move forward in a way that feels sustainable. She takes a very practical, high-touch approach, staying closely connected with clients and helping them make small, intentional changes that actually stick. Jill, welcome to the Simply Retirement Podcast.
Eric, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We've been working on this for a few months now. We got it done. But before we get to our primary conversation, you've recently done something that I am extremely impressed by. You recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Would you mind sharing just briefly about what your experience was with that?
It was, it was challenging and, it was very, obviously you do a lot of thinking, you're not like sitting there talking the whole time while you're climbing. It was like a 7-day trek, but it was really, I wasn't feeling great. And I think the thing to take away from that is that I wrote about it recently, that there are some days where you have to like bring your best, even though you don't have your best. And there's never going to be the stars that align for that, but you just have to figure out a way to make it happen. And somehow I found a way to make it happen on Summit Day without being able to eat and without sleeping. And we can have a whole episode on that. And
I bet. Yeah, it's not very impressed though. Yes.
Look, at 54, that I was able to do it with 3 autoimmune diseases. I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud that I pushed through some adversity, in terms of how I was feeling.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect lead into our conversation then. And I want to start with just your story. You built a successful career, but at some point you decided to make a pretty big life change yourself. What was going on at the time in your life that led you to make that transition? And how did that experience shape what you're doing, the work you're doing now for women or with women today?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that I was in corporate for 30 years. So 10 years in investment banking, 20 years in tech building products. So high stress environments, very male dominated, not a lot of chatter about mental health or anything else. Like for women, whatever you're dealing with, you put it, aside and you can't talk about any of it. And what happened was that about 3.5 years ago, I left corporate. I had had enough. And I had enough with the misogyny. I had enough with a lot of like the hustle culture for the sake of hustle culture. Over the course of the time I was in tech, I had also gone through a major health transformation. So when I left investment banking and went into tech, I had been diagnosed with my first autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis. And it was at a time where the internet was very nascent and there wasn't a lot of information out there and people didn't talk about autoimmune at that point. And it was really challenging. And I was like, I didn't take care of myself at all. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was really trying to like outrun my disease, which was very stupid in retrospect. And I started on a journey over 20 years ago to get healthy. And I guess you could say that kind of culminated in a couple of months ago, summiting Kilimanjaro. But that didn't happen overnight. And it happened by making a lot of mistakes along the way and having to rethink how I was living my life, even while I was in corporate, and making those very small incremental changes and learning that trying to make the big swings was not the way that things were going to stick. And that very much influenced like kind of the questions I'd be getting from my friends and even friends of friends, where they're like, I have a question about this. And there's so much garbage out there. And I'm sure you see it in terms of the financial arena as well, in terms of like what to do with gold or this or some trend and crypto and, Bitcoin and everything else, right? And so I started thinking about what I was passionate about. And I realized that I was really passionate about informing women over 40 that they actually have more time than they think they do. We just need to rethink how you are managing your different blocks of time. And so that's how accountability via texting came to be, because you're getting those reinforcing supportive nudges on a daily basis that help keep you on track so you can build those habits very incrementally, but on an upward trajectory.
So how did out of curiosity, did you try other methods as far as phone calls or emails? How'd you land on text messaging?
I was working with a business coach. Actually, I have to give them credit. They're the one who, they came up with the idea. They're like, you should just try this. And I thought all right, sure. I mean, texting's easy. And then I thought about it because the whole thing is that whenever, if you've gone to therapy or even you're working with a personal trainer and they're like, okay, or a physical therapist, they're like, okay, do this at home. And you have to be so locked in and focused to do stuff in between the sessions, right? And most people have so many distractions that unless they are highly motivated to do that homework in between, they're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. And so for me, the texting is a way that it's asynchronous, meaning that we don't have to be in a meeting. You can just take the information when you can take it at whatever part of the day and then action upon it. And if you want to send something back to me, you could send it back to me and I'll respond when I respond. And not a lot of people were doing that. And so I thought let me give this a try because I think that it seemed less invasive, but it created an opportunity for me to send very practical pieces of advice to people that they can take and go and do.
Well, the reason I ask about that is because as much as, there's kind of this backlash against technology and everybody's looking at their phones and everything, but just personally, what I found is just every once in a while, you'll just get that text message. You get it from your wife, you get it from your daughter, you get it from whoever it might be. It just it's just at the right time. And it hits you, you can absorb it and you can, even if it's just, hey, I love you or whatever. And I try to be conscious of that. And if it pops into my head, I'll just send something to my wife and just say, hey, I love you, miss you, whatever it is. And I just think there's something cool about the text message idea that, again, she might not get it immediately, but she will get it.
Well, the thing is that, and I love that. I think the thing is that let's say you had a plan for today and life got in the way, which is very typical for women over 40. And I'm sure with some of the clients you work with, someone's like, yeah, I'll get you that document or whatever. And then life gets in the way and then that doesn't happen. And so then the texting allows me to get to you straight away to give you some positive reinforcement and say, okay, shit happens, right? But how about you just get outside for a walk for 15 minutes today and just clear your head, which for most people, they can make that happen. And I will tell you, over 9 times out of 10, I get a text back you know what? That helped. And yeah, it wasn't the same thing, for example, as doing your actual workout. But you know what? Getting outside, even in gray Seattle, and it is very gray and stereotypical today in Seattle, you still feel better getting outside and moving a little bit. And so the texts allow me to send you that encouraging little nudge of something you can do that doesn't feel like this huge, heavy lift.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a great concept. One of the things I wanted to ask you, in our practice, we often will see women who knows something probably needs to change. It could be, maybe it's a career shift. It's retiring, preparing for retirement, maybe a relationship. Even if they see it on paper, it seems like, hey, yeah, this is something I probably need to do. They'll hesitate. From your perspective, what are the primary reasons you see that prevent women from making a big life change?
I mean, there's always the fear of the unknown, right? You're like, okay, this sucks, but I could kind of handle it. I've been handling it, right? You think that, but also they haven't had enough skin in the game, right? I think is the main reason. And I think, and this is with any type of life change, that for me with my health journey, I was on 2 very heavy duty medications. I was very overweight. I was not moving around. And it was taking me 45 minutes to get out of bed. And finally one day I just had enough. And I'm like, I am 31, 32 years old. What the holy hell? I deserve better. Right. And, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, right? He was like, maybe if you moved more, you would feel better. Like he never mentioned the weight. He never mentioned any of that. And he was just like, if you move more, you would feel better. And it got me thinking. And then probably like a week or two later, I was just like, and pardon the expression, like, fuck this. Like, this is just not what I don't deserve this. I deserve better. And I think the thing is that whether it's something financial or something, like mental, physical health related, you have to wake up and decide, I deserve better. And when you do that, then people can come in and like help you, right? So if someone's like, I deserve better, Jill, then it's like, okay, let's talk about what you need. And then whether it's me or like, let's say it's you, like whatever it is, like I'm not trying to be all things to all people, but I could at least, if you say that you deserve better, that's like an indication, that's a signal that you are ready to make some kind of change. And we don't know what that change will end up being at the end, but we know that what's happening right now is not good enough.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. So let's say a woman has made hey, I'm making this change, a big life transition. What are some of the mistakes you see that they may make right off the bat, or where things kind of tend to go sideways?
Perfection. Perfection is the number one thing. And we are so hard on ourselves. And I literally had a conversation with someone yesterday about this. And it was really, I have the conversation a lot, but we got really into it yesterday. And it was that you're waiting for once I get over this hump, I'll seek help, right? That is so common that it's like, okay, once I get over this crazy, then I can reach out to Jill and I can work with her, or I can reach out to Eric and work with him. And the reality is that there is never going to be a good time. I was talking to another client last week, and she's going through a lot of changes, like divorce, getting back into the workforce, all the things. And I said, oh, you should reach out to so-and-so. Who is a former colleague of ours who is now retired. And she was like, I feel like I need to have like my resume together and everything. And I said, I disagree with that. I think that what you could do is say, I'm looking to get advice on where my next step is. Because if this person didn't know what she wanted to do, right? And so if she was waiting to figure out, like some lightning bolt was going to come to tell her like, I know what to do. Right? And then get your resume perfect, you're going to have a year pass by, right? Whereas if she has this conversation with this individual I'm referring to, she might be able to get some ideas in terms of like certain career paths she might not have thought of, certain connections that she could make for this person, and how to gear her resume that way. And I think that perfection thing, like, I need to show up 100% prepared before I go meet with Eric. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like that gets in the way of a lot of women. And it's so like, and I'm guilty of it myself. Like I had this last week. So we'll talk about the accountability coach who had to hold herself accountable. I've been meaning to send out an email since I've pivoted my business to like my friends and family. So now this is like a friendly group of people, like people who want me to be successful, right? And for 2 years, I have been like not doing this. And finally last week, I started telling people, like about a week and a half ago, I started telling people, and I'm like, you know what I've never done? And because I wanted to almost like shame myself, right? Which is terrible. But I wanted to really hold myself accountable and say like, I haven't done this. I'm worried about the email, and people are going to be like, this is dumb and blah, blah, blah. And she needs her friends to make her business work and whatever. And it was completely ridiculous. Like logically, I knew this was ridiculous, but I did it. I sent out I got some feedback from people who were lovely, and they didn't shame me. I mean, like, cause I don't shame my clients. Like, they didn't shame me. They gave me some feedback and everything else. And I got the email out. But I think that I was trying to come up with the perfect email, and that was never going to happen. And so I think that perfection really holds women back, because I feel like also women are so criticized, whether it's our appearance, whether it's how we communicate, whether it's like how we manage our time in terms of whatever personal commitments we have, in addition to our professional commitments. I think there's just this constant scrutiny of women. So then we're put in this mindset that we have to be perfect.
That's awesome. So let's flip it around then. So if you said, hey, these are the 2 or 3 most important things women can do to successfully navigate a transition, something that really makes a difference that, turns that chaos into clarity, what would those 2 to 3 things be?
Well, I would say that you want to really narrow your focus, right? So a lot of times, like when I'll like talk to clients, I'll be like, what are your goals for the week? And like some of them will list, especially the newer ones, they'll list out like 10 things. And I'm like, wait, how about we get like 2 for this week? 2 that on Friday afternoon at 5:00 that you're going to be like, yeah, I got this done, right? Like, let's just slim it down and get focused. So I think the thing is that you want to really narrow. So number 1 is narrow down the focus. Number 2 is understand your why. And what I mean by that is that someone will come to me and they'll be like, I need your help in like losing weight. And I'm not like a medical professional. I don't play one on TV. I'm not a licensed financial professional or legal professional. So let's just put all that out there. But what I will say to someone who comes to me with that is that, well, why is it that you want to lose weight? Is it, and generally it's because of a lack of confidence in some aspect of their life, right? And that's what we need to fix. So we need to understand, number 2 is really understanding your why for why you want to make these changes. So if someone is getting divorced, right? Or it's like they want to be more financially, so it might be more in your case, like I want to be more financially secure for my retirement. And then you may dig in and find out like, oh, someone might be looking to do a gray divorce, right? And so that's then your advice is going to be completely different than someone who's like, yeah, I just want to like start saving more, right? Like, because when you're working back from understanding their why, that is going to completely change the advice that you're going to give someone. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then number 3, I would say, is that you need to be ruthless about focusing on you. You need to be an asshole. And it's like, chances are you're not being an asshole to others. And if people perceive it as that's a different issue, right? But you need to be prepared to be selfish, because what's going to happen is that change is going to be uncomfortable. And I could tell you, I went through a lot of uncomfortable as I went through my change. Even last week with this email, it was really uncomfortable sending out that draft to people and being like, I think this is bleh, right?
Right.
And so the thing is that number 3 is that I will ask you to do things that I know will be uncomfortable for you. Not against your morals, like nothing like that, right? But it is going to be uncomfortable, because it's going to be like potentially you saying no to someone that you are not used to saying no to, right? And so I would say those are the 3 things, is that, it's really around like, getting that focus, right? And just really being prepared to be uncomfortable, right? Like you have to be willing to do that, and understanding your why. Those are your 3.
Hi, everyone. It's Eric. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. I want to take just a quick moment to share a resource I think you'll find really valuable. If you've ever asked yourself, how much is my Social Security reduced if I file early? Or am I eligible for benefits as a spouse, surviving spouse, or even after divorce? You're not alone. That's why we created our ultimate guide to women's Social Security success. It includes 6 of our most popular Social Security guides and checklists for women. Inside, you'll find a 2026 quick reference guide with key Social Security amounts and limits to be aware of, along with 5 additional guides and checklists to help you make more informed decisions about eligibility and filing strategies. You can download it for free at womenssocialsecurityguide.com. Keep it handy wherever you may be in the decision-making process. Now, back to the episode. I'd like to get your perspective on something, and by no means am I trying to throw my wife under the bus, but I don't know if I've actually said this to her, but I think what makes her most uncomfortable is not stepping out to help other people.
Yes.
Is
very
not
common.
That feeling like And it's one of those situations. It's one of the reasons I love her so much. She will do anything for anybody. She would much rather do something for somebody else than to do for something for herself. And fortunately, I think she's transitioned over the last few years more to say, she wants to focus on, just like what you're talking about, focus on her health. She was a teacher for 25 years, and anybody who thinks teaching is easy is out of their minds.
And I think teaching has changed a lot in the past 25 years as well. I think in terms of the challenges that teachers face. I mean, when I was, when you and I were in school, we weren't doing like active shooter drills.
Right. Well, and I think for her, it's, again, she knows she's in her mind, and I'm pretty sure it's true. She's still dealing with health issues that came from her years as teaching, the stress and the constant go, and the answering to other teachers, to parents, to administration, and now putting herself in a position where she needs to focus on herself and her own health, physically, mentally, and so on. But I think she does struggle with that. She feels like, hey, again, if somebody asks her to help for help, she jumps on it. She will help anybody for any reason. And sometimes, again, it's hard not to say no, but that's what you got to do sometimes.
I mean, helping people say no is probably the thing that I spend 50% of like my conversations on, right? Because I do a 1 hour check-in with my clients once a month. And so and the texting kind of feeds off of that. But the thing is that the no is a complete sentence, right? It is. And I think that the other thing is that when you're helping others, it's kind of like this drug of like, okay, I don't have to think about me. I don't have to do my work on me. I don't have to do that internal work on me. So it's a lot easier for me to be like, if you're asking me for a favor, right? And I'm dealing with something like challenging, like personally or something like that. And Eric, you reach out to me, you're like, hey, can you like talk to this person? They're thinking about doing this. And I'm going to say, you know what? It's so much easier for me to say yes to that because I can do that like with my hands tied behind my back, like no problem. But then that's allowing me to avoid like reevaluating some big personal thing going on in my life, which is way more difficult. Right. And I think that that's the key is like, it's easy for your wife to go and help out someone, mentor a younger teacher or, whatever that is. Right. But for her to have to think about like, man, I have to really think about how I want to live like this next era of my life. And that means I'm going to have to do habit change and everything. That's like a big, hairy, scary monster. And that's where the texting comes in because I make it less of a big, hairy, scary monster, right? Like I think, like I had a client sign up with me one time because they kept putting off doing their divorce agreement. And maybe this is probably going to sound familiar to you where someone's like, okay, on Sunday, I'm going to take all Sunday afternoon and I'm going to get all my financial documents together for Eric, right? Now, how often does someone have all Sunday afternoon to get their financial documents together for you?
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. So she's telling me this and she's like, I just need help getting organized and like, I'm a mess, right? And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And so what I did was she'd been putting this document off for 4 months, okay? 4 months. So now not only do you not have the document done, you're carrying around the mental load that you keep kicking this down the road. So it's not like there's any benefit. It's not like she's forgotten about the document. It's every week she's like, I'm going to do it this week. So she's carrying around that mental anguish that she has not done this yet. So there's literally no upside here. And what I did was I said, all right, today I want you just to write down what is left in finalizing this divorce document. I don't want you to do anything. Literally write down the steps. Next day, she wrote down the steps. I want you to identify how many steps you can get through in 30 minutes. Don't do any of the steps. You are not allowed to go over 30 minutes. If a task brings you over 30 minutes, break it down or eliminate the task. Then day 3, do the tasks. And we got it done in 9 days.
Nice.
Just by breaking it down like that. Something that she was putting off for 4 months. We got it done in 9 days. That was that. And where I help people do that is just like kind of simplifying it. And, you know, kind of going back to that first point of like what people need to do is let's focus. Let's not say like, oh, I'm going to finalize my divorce agreement this week. Let's say it's like, all right, I'm going to make a list of what I need to get together for my divorce agreement, you know, to finalize the divorce agreement. Like what financial papers do I need or blah, 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 blah. That's step one. Make that the goal for the week. Then next week, you can make the goal for, okay, I'm now going to reach out to Eric and find out blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. You know, and then go from there. And then before you know it, you have it done.
Right. Well, so here's something else I want to ask you about. And I guess my assumption, and tell me if I'm wrong with that, is in most cases when people are reaching out to you or working with you, it's the decision has been made. Hey, I've got this big transition. I've got this big thing I need to do. I'm going to reach out to Jill and help get her, again, the accountability coach. But many of the transitions we see, unfortunately, are not planned. It could be widowhood. It could be divorce.
Yeah.
A job loss, health issues, whatever it might be. Even retirement can feel unplanned if it arrives sooner than what you thought it might.
Yes.
So when you're thinking about a situation where that big life event wasn't planned and now all of a sudden it's on top of you, what do you feel like what's the first thing a woman should do in a situation like that?
I mean, obviously it depends on, you know, like I have a very good friend who lost her husband suddenly. And that's we could talk about that situation versus like, say, losing your job. But I guess the through line in that is like, okay, can you pay your bills? Like first and foremost, like, are you physically, you know, you almost have to go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Are you physically safe, right? And do you have a place to stay? Can you, you know, then can you pay your bills? Okay. So let's assume like if you're working with me, you can pay your bills, right? Like you're not worrying about that, but you may not understand like what the estate plan is. You may not understand like what the insurance situation is and like all of that stuff. And so the thing is that it's balancing what can you emotionally handle from your grief of the loss, the person in your life, whatever that is. And then I kind of work from there. And that's why it's very bespoke. So, you know, with one client, it was kind of like, they knew where all the documents were. They had all that worked out. So it was like, we'll say it was a pretty good situation because a lot of times people don't have that worked out. Like they don't know where the documents are. They don't know what was covered or anything like that. And so the coaching was really more around like she's like, I want to move forward, even though I don't have the emotional capacity to do everything. And I'm like, no one's asking you to do everything. But let's just take one step at a time, right? Daughter was going away to college as a freshman. So, I mean, it was understanding that there was a lot of emotional things that needed to be taken into account. And so it was less on the tactical, like, let's get shit done mindset and more on the, okay, it's not like the time is not ticking where like you're going to lose your house and you can't pay your bills. So let's focus on getting you starting to like feel better about yourself, right? And feel better about the fact that you can do this while also making sure, like, are you going to therapy? Is your daughter going to therapy? Like, what are you doing? Like this person, you know, is a very strong person of faith. Like, how is your Bible study group going? Like, you know, that is a very big source of comfort for this individual. And so it's like, are you making time for those activities, right? And not isolating yourself too much. Because sometimes, yeah, you do need to just like sit in fetal position and just like cry it out and everything. And okay, whatever. But also trying to make sure that this person was trying to find something that could help her refill her tank little by little while she was going through this. Now, if we take something on the other side of the spectrum, like divorce, it's a different type of grief. And there's obviously sadness and everything else, but it's more around like, well, do you have like your documents organized? Have you communicated that you're leaving? Or is this going to be like, I'm dropping this and I want to have my shit together before I drop the bomb that I'm leaving, right? And so it's really around getting people to focus on what matters to them. Now, I did have this one situation that was pretty, I will say, unique. It was a sales call, and I got referred to this person through a friend, and she's going through all the things that she's trying to get done. So it's like, my kid's going to college next year. I got to think about if I want to go back to full-time work or just do like, fractional consulting work. We have to do some stuff around the house. I got to decide if I'm going to leave my husband. Oh yeah. Like I have to start a new workout routine. And I'm like, wait, did you just say that you're trying to figure out if you need to leave your husband? And I'm not judging. I just want to make sure I heard that right. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I think that we need to kind of eliminate some of the mental clutter you have so that you could focus on that decision. Because that decision, and I mean, like, and I was trying to be as like empathetic as possible. It's like, but that decision is a big fucking deal. And that's going to set up all these other things, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, the workout routine's important and everything. Like, yes, I take my fitness very seriously, but like,
let's start with this big one right over here.
Yeah, and she just drops it in like a list of like, I got to go food shopping. I got to pick up the eggs, the chicken, the vegetables, the bacon, cereal. And, I got to decide if I'm leaving my husband. But I think that's the thing that women just are like, I just have this list of shit to do. Right? And so where I came in there is that like, look, I think we need to like, this is a very important decision, but I want to help you eliminate the clutter that like is really extraneous at this point so that this way you can actually focus on having that discussion with a therapist or, a divorce coach, like whatever.
Well, and I think I was going to ask you, I think you've already kind of shared. I was going to ask you kind of what's your process or what's it like to work with you, but I think you've shared a good amount of that already with, the text messages, the 1 hour check-in on a monthly basis. Is there anything else you want to add to that as far as what it looks like to actually have a relationship or work with you in that capacity?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you sign up, I give you an intake questionnaire, which is a Google Doc, and you list all the things. So that this way, when we go into the onboarding call, which is separate from the monthly check-ins, okay, I have an idea of what's really driving you and where you're at. And I really want to understand your motivations. I want to understand your feedback style, right? Because that's really important. And then in the onboarding call, we're talking more. I'm trying to get a sense of like, even like your sense of humor, because sometimes the texts are like a GIF, right? And, in terms of just like trying to lighten the mood and everything else. And that's where I will just say my texts are not AI. It is very much around understanding the person and knowing when to send a GIF versus being like, that sucks. I'm really sorry. Right? And AI is not there yet. So I just want to put that out there. But then it's really the texts, and then it's the monthly check-ins. But a lot of it is life is going to get in the way, and I am going to adapt and adjust with you as life gets in the way so that this way you can feel you get back on track. The first exercise I have clients do is write up a pie chart of how their time is spent today. And then I have them tell me what they want their pie chart to look like 6 months from now. And the reason why I like the pie chart is because you're going to have to give up something in order to make time for something. And a pie chart is very easy to understand that concept.
So I wanted to ask you, because I'm very big on process, and I want women to evaluate us just as much as we're evaluating them to make sure we're the right fit when we're talking about retirement planning. I tell prospective clients all the time, hey, I will hope this is the last time you ever have to make this decision. If you're going to hire us, this is for good. This is the next 20, 25, 30 years, however long each of us are going to be around. From your perspective, is there anybody who's the ideal fit for you that you're looking for, or somebody, hey, this is just not quite I'm not going to be the right person? I think that's one of the things that we always talk about is, the 45-year-old that's planning for college for their children, or they're trying to pay off their mortgage, or, whatever it might be, is different than the 65-year-old who's trying to make this big transition into and through retirement. So is there anybody that you say, hey, this is kind of where I'm the best fit?
I think it's about being open-minded, right? And because the change that we're going to talk about is going to be uncomfortable, right? So let's say we're talking about your wife. it's going to force her to like not just reflexively say yes back on text that she can help someone. It's going to be like, I want you to wait 10 seconds before you respond, which doesn't seem like a long amount of time, but it is when you're going back and forth on texting. And that is going to feel uncomfortable. And she is going to feel that she is letting people down. But the thing is that, so if you're not open-minded to trying to be a little bit uncomfortable, and obviously I'll figure out like with each client, how much I can like widen that aperture on pushing them out of their comfortable range, right? But I would say it's to be open-minded to the possibility. I think, Eric, women are very task-focused. And what I try and get people to think about is being more possibility-focused, right? Because women are so like, here's my to-do list, here's my shit to do, and blah, 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 blah. And literally my text every Thursday to all of my clients in some way, shape, or form is not what are you doing this weekend? What are you doing to recharge this weekend? Trying to get them out of the task-focused mindset into the possibility-focused mindset. And so if you're just like, I want to do the same thing, I don't want to change, I'm not the right person for you. But I work with people, there's a fair amount of my clients who are both on GLP-1s and ADHD medication. And they're perimenopausal, so they're probably on some kind of hormone therapy and everything else. This is all very normal for me. Like I said, I am not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. But the thing is that there are women who work with me who are able to make these changes, and they come to me and they're on these medications. And the thing is that when I'm unsure about something, I'm like, you know what? This is a question you should ask your endocrinologist, right? Or this is a question that you should ask, say, your therapist, because I am not qualified to do that. But here's what I'm worried about, right? So I think that I don't want someone to be like, I can't work with an accountability coach because I'm on a GLP-1. That I don't care about that, right? I'm not going to judge anyone for being on a medication. Like it's your body, your choice. But it's really that open-mindedness and willing to try and make the change. And my clients are great. I think that the other thing is that in the sales call, what you see is what you get. It's very candid. I try and keep it very approachable. So if that style turns you off in the sales call, you're going to opt out. I guess one last thing I will say on this point is that I have found that it's not the price that tends to turn people off when people don't sign up. It's more of they don't believe in themselves that they're able to make the time to make the changes. And I would tell anyone who's listening that you have more time than you think you do, but it's not a failure on you. It's just more someone else taking a look at your time objectively. And again, giving you some advice on how you can rejigger your time to make time for the shit that matters to you.
That's awesome. Well, that's perfect. So for any listeners who may be interested in learning more about you and the work you do, what's the best way to connect with you?
So website is golong.me. And then I'm on Instagram at just go long. So that's the Instagram title. I have a show on YouTube. I'm sure you're going to have links in there. I'm also on LinkedIn under Jill Beck. You could find me there. So, and I also write a Substack. I write every week about different things. Last week I wrote about Galentine's Day, wrote about climbing Kilimanjaro and the life lessons learned there. So you can find me in a whole bunch of places if you use Jill Beck as opposed to Jill Beck, because Consor at least is a little bit different.
Awesome. Well, yes, and we will absolutely share all of this in the show notes. Jill, thank you so much for joining me. This has been an awesome conversation. As always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you're navigating a major life transition, planned, unplanned, and this conversation resonates with you, we'll include Jill's information in today's show notes so you can learn more about her work and reach out to her for that accountability factor. That is it for today's episode. For all the links and resources mentioned today, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.